Growing up in the northern part of the States, you get used to things that would probably make most people down south or even in the cities shake their heads. For feet of snow, still gotta get your coffee. Frozen lakes, perfect time for ice fishing. And when all that snow melts in just a few days, you throw on shorts and head out for a walk in the woods because you've been cooped up for too long. That's just how it is. A few weeks back, right after one of those late spring melt-offs, I decided to go for a solo hike. I'd done this trail dozens of times before. It winds through dense woods, pine and birch mostly, with spots where the sun cuts through and dries up patches of the muddy ground. But there are low spots too, swampy areas where the water sits and stinks, even after the snow disappears. That day, the air still had a bite to it in the morning, but by noon it was pushing 60 degrees. Warm enough to feel good, cool enough to keep bugs away, for a little while anyway. I packed light, just a day pack with water, a granola bar, a small first aid kit, and bear spray. Standard stuff. I wasn't planning on going far, just enough to stretch my legs and shake off the winter rust. The trail started out familiar. Mud squelched under my boots in the shady spots, and there were still patches of snow tucked into the north-facing dips. Everything smelled like wet earth and pine needles. Birds were loud, but not in a bad way, just background noise. For a while, it was peaceful. About an hour in, I reached a fork where you could loop back toward the parking area or head deeper into the woods. Without thinking too much, I veered onto the deeper path. The ground gets rockier out that way, less waterlogged. The trees thin out for a bit before it drops into a small valley, which I've always liked because it feels cut off from the rest of the world. There's a ridge above it, and if you stand just right, you can't see any sign of roads or power lines. Just trees and rocks and sky. But as I got closer to the valley, something felt off. I wouldn't call it a bad feeling. Not yet. Just a subtle itch in the back of my mind, like I'd forgotten something important. It was quiet. Not silent, but quieter than it should have been. Less birds, less rustling, just the wind pushing through the tops of the pines. I stopped walking and stood still for a minute, tried to listen. That's when I heard a stick snap. It wasn't close, maybe 50, 60 feet off to my right, where the slope started to drop. Could have been a deer, probably was. But here's the thing. When deer move through the woods, they don't snap sticks unless they're spooked. They're light on their feet. This sounded heavy. My mind went straight to bears. Maybe it was early for them to be out and about, but with the weather warming up fast, it wasn't impossible. And a hungry bear just out of hibernation wouldn't be too picky about lunch. I stayed still, watched the tree line where the sound came from. Nothing moved, but that itch in the back of my brain got worse. After a minute, I started walking again, slower this time, more careful. My plan was to finish the loop and head back. No need to push my luck. But then it happened again. Another snap, this time behind me, a little closer. Now, I'm not the paranoid type. I know the woods. I know the animals in it. But when something heavy is moving through thick brush, pacing you, your gut starts to talk louder than your brain. I remembered what they taught us as kids. Don't run. Don't turn your back. If it's a black bear, you make yourself big and loud. If it's a cougar, you keep eye contact and back away slow. Wolves don't usually mess with people alone, but there's always exceptions. And sometimes animals don't follow the rules. I didn't see anything, not yet, but I could hear it now. Not just snapping sticks, breathing. Slow, steady, not close enough to see, but close enough to feel. The wind shifted, and suddenly, the woods smelled different. Hard to explain, but it was musky, sour almost, like wet dog mixed with rotting leaves. That was enough for me. I pulled out the bear spray, flipped the safety, kept it low, ready but not panicked. I wasn't going to run, but I was done with this hike. I started backing up the trail one step at a time. My boots sank into the mud in spots, made it hard to move quiet. The thing, whatever it was, kept pace. Still hidden, still just out of sight. And then I saw it, not clearly, through the trees, about 30 feet off. A shape, tall, upright, too big to be a person. Its skin looked patchy, like it had been burned or was missing fur. Grayish, sickly. It swayed slightly, shifting its weight from side to side. And for a split second, my brain told me it was a man. But then it moved, and I saw the shoulders. Broad, hunched, arms too long. The way it swayed wasn't right, like it was testing its balance. Then it stood fully upright on its hind legs. And that's when it clicked. Bear. Or at least what was left of one. Mange had taken most of its fur. Its skin looked raw in places, cracked in others. Its face was gaunt, the usual round bear features sunken and sharp. From a distance, with the light playing tricks, it could easily be mistaken for something human. Something wrong. It sniffed the air, head swinging side to side. Its eyes were dark pits from where I stood. It didn't charge, just stood there, swaying, watching. My heart was hammering so hard I could barely hear anything else. I didn't move, barely breathed, just kept the bear spray pointed and hoped it wasn't hungry enough to pick a fight. After what felt like forever, it dropped back down to all fours. That's when it really hit me how sick it was. Its movements were slow, almost painful. It limped as it turned, disappearing into the thicker brush. Still, I didn't move until I couldn't hear it anymore. I backed out of that valley slower than I've ever moved in my life. Every stick under my boots sounded like a gunshot. Every gust of wind made me flinch. But the bear didn't come back. The rest of the hike back to the car was a blur. I kept glancing over my shoulder, expecting to see that shape again. But it was gone. When I finally reached the parking lot, my hands were shaking so bad I dropped my keys twice before getting the door open. Sitting in the driver's seat, I just stared out at the tree line for a while. Later, when I looked up bears with mange, the pictures were almost identical to what I'd seen. Hairless patches, exposed, angry-looking skin, thin faces. It made sense, logical. But out there, alone in those woods, your mind doesn't default to logic. It reaches for whatever makes the most sense in that moment, even if it's not the right answer. I'd always thought those stories about skinwalkers or human-like creatures in the woods were exaggerated. People seeing shapes in the dark and letting their imagination run wild. But now I understood, because for a moment out there I was one of those people. I knew it was a bear. Science said so. Common sense said so. But my gut had whispered something else. Something I don't like admitting. That's the thing about the deep woods. It doesn't care what you believe. It doesn't care how much you know. Out there, far from cell towers and coffee shops, you're not the top of the food chain. You're just another animal trying not to be eaten. And sometimes, when you hear a twig snap, it's not your imagination. It's not a ghost. It's not a legend. It's just something real, something sick, something desperate. But that's scary enough. I wasn't worried when the gas light came on. I was out in the middle of nowhere, sure, but I knew this area. A long stretch of forested backroads, cutting through the deep woods. I'd driven this route before. It wasn't even supposed to be the middle of nowhere. I'd just taken a wrong turn an hour earlier, thinking it would loop back to the highway. Google Maps had no signal. The road signs were all rusted over, and it had been at least 45 minutes since I'd seen another car. Still, it was fine. I had half a pack of cigarettes, a decent playlist, and according to my truck's readout, about 20 miles left in the tank. Plenty, or so I thought. The forest got denser as the road narrowed. The kind of thick where trees crowd up to the edge of the gravel, branches scratching the sides of the truck like fingernails. No more wide shoulders to pull over, no cell towers, no fences. Just miles of pines, stretching out in every direction. A blanket of green so thick it made the daylight dim. About 15 minutes after the gas light came on, I started to notice the smell. It wasn't smoke or anything like that. More like rot. Damp, sour, earthy. Like dead leaves after rain, but stronger. I cracked the window, thinking maybe a deer carcass was nearby, but the smell got worse, almost like it was inside the truck. That's when the engine coughed. A little shudder, then another. The needle was bottomed out. 0 miles left. I should have turned around when I saw the last gas station 20 miles back. But now, here I was, in the middle of these woods, when the engine gave a last stuttering cough and died. Silence. No rumble. No hum. Just the ticking sound of the cooling engine. I sat there for a second, listening to the forest. There was no wind, no birds, just that rotting smell stronger than before. I tried the key again. The starter clicked, but nothing caught. It wasn't coming back. I'd always figured if I ever broke down somewhere, I'd call for a tow, wait in the cab, maybe kill time on my phone. But none of that was happening here. No signal, no bars, just that smell. The forest pressing in. I opened the door and stepped out. It was quiet in a way that makes your ears ring. Not peaceful, heavy, like the woods themselves were holding their breath. I popped the hood, more out of habit than hope. Maybe there was something obvious I could fix, but of course I'm no mechanic. It was just metal and hoses to me. I slammed it shut harder than I needed to, the sound too loud in all that silence. It wasn't until then that I realized how vulnerable I felt. Out here, no car, no signal, no clue where the nearest house was. And that smell, thicker, like something had died nearby not long ago. I figured I should start walking. It was late afternoon, but under that forest canopy, it might as well have been dusk. The gravel crunched under my boots as I started down the road. The forest on either side was a wall. The kind of place where you'd never step off the road because 5 feet in, you'd lose all sense of direction. About 100 yards from the truck, I stopped. Something was moving, not loudly, just the faintest sound of brush shifting. Heavy, deliberate, not a rabbit, not a bird, something bigger. I couldn't see anything through the trees, but I could feel it. That skin-prickling sense that you're not alone. I kept walking a little faster now, but it followed, always staying just out of sight, just inside the tree line. I'd walk 20 steps, hear it move, stop, and it would stop too. I wanted to believe it was a deer, or maybe a bear, but the way it moved, keeping pace, matching my stops, it felt too intentional. I told myself not to run. Running was for people in movies. Running was how you turned curiosity into a chase. So I kept walking. The smell got worse. It was almost sweet now, sickly, like meat left out in the sun. I covered my nose with my sleeve, trying not to gag. That's when I saw it. Barely a shape, a little ahead of me in the trees. Low to the ground. Dark. Still. For a moment, I thought it was a stump. But then it moved. Not a step, but a shift. Like it was crouched, coiled. Watching. I didn't stop to get a better look. I started walking faster, heart thudding. The road curved ahead, but the woods pressed in tighter. The thing stayed with me, moving when I moved, stopping when I stopped. That was the worst part. The stopping, like it knew. I passed an old logging trail branching off to the left. It was overgrown, barely more than a break in the trees. For a split second, I thought about taking it, but that felt like a mistake. At least on this gravel road, I had space. If I left it, I was giving up my only path. So I kept going. The air felt thicker. Every breath tasted like rot. And the thing was closer now. I couldn't see it, but I could hear it. Each step sounded heavier, crunching dead leaves, breaking small branches. I thought about running then, but my legs didn't want to listen. They just kept up that fast walk, stiff and mechanical. That's when the woods opened up. Clearing. Not a big one, but enough space to see the sky again. Faded blue, streaked with clouds. On the far side of the clearing was an old service road. Dirt and gravel, but wider, maybe even used sometimes. If I could get there, maybe I'd find a gate or a trail marker, maybe even a truck coming through. I crossed into the clearing, and the sound behind me stopped. Too quiet. I didn't look back. I kept moving faster now toward the service road. Halfway across, the smell hit me so hard I gagged. Then I saw why. At the edge of the clearing, where the trees started again, was a pile of bones. Not clean, not bleached by time. Fresh. Ribs snapped open. A skull cracked. Bits of fur still clinging. The kind of scene you see in nature documentaries, but this was no lion kill. This was close. Recent. I didn't stop to study it. I was almost to the service road when I heard it behind me. A sound like breathing, but deeper, wet. I ran. All the rules about not running, out the window. My boots slipped on the gravel, lungs burning, but I didn't stop. I could hear it moving now. No more creeping. Heavy, fast, pounding through the brush. I hit the service road and turned left, not knowing where it went, just needing to move. The thing didn't hesitate. Crashed through the edge of the clearing, into the road behind me. I didn't look back. I just ran. But I could hear it. Closer than I wanted to know. The road sloped downhill. My feet slipped, skidding in the loose dirt, but I used the slope, let gravity pull me faster. Branches whipped past. My breath came ragged. Ahead, the road curved again, but this time, I saw something. Faded paint, metal, a gate, old, rusted, but standing. Beyond it, the hint of a paved road. Civilization. I poured everything into that last stretch. Legs burning, lungs screaming. I hit the gate at a full sprint, grabbed the top and vaulted over. My foot caught, sent me sprawling into the dirt, but I didn't care. I was up again in a second, stumbling toward the paved road. Behind me, the thing stopped. It didn't cross the gate. I finally looked back. I wish I hadn't. It was standing just beyond the gate. Not quite a bear. Not quite anything I could name. Gaunt, patchy fur, limbs too long, too thin. Its head was low, eyes reflecting dull in the fading light. It didn't growl, didn't charge. It just stood there, breathing, watching. I backed away down the paved road, never turning my back, until the curve took it out of sight. It didn't follow. After another quarter mile, I found a service station. Old but real, payphone out front. I called for a tow. An hour later, a truck came to haul me out. The driver didn't ask why I was waiting a mile from my own truck. I didn't offer it. We passed the clearing on the way back. There was no pile of bones, no smell, just trees. But when we reached my truck, the hood was dented, deep gouges along the sides, like something had scraped its claws, slow and deliberate. I didn't say a word. I just got in the cab when it was gassed up and drove, not stopping until I hit the main highway. That was 6 months ago. I've never taken that back road again, and I always keep my gas tank full. Always. I had camped alone before, so this trip didn't seem like a big deal when I planned it. The location was one of those out-of-the-way places, not marked on official park maps, but known through old forums and word of mouth. Some called it Ridge Hollow, a long stretch of uneven ground carved out by old floods, flanked by steep wooded ridges on both sides. It wasn't a tourist spot, not even close. People said you could go a whole weekend there without seeing another person. That was exactly why I picked it. It was late October, cold but not winter cold yet. Leaves had already started to fall, giving the woods that dead, brittle look. Bare branches poking out like bones, ground covered in slick, wet leaves that hid ankle-twisting roots and rocks. Perfect camping weather if you don't mind the cold. I liked it better than summer. Fewer people, fewer bugs. I parked my truck near an old service road, shouldered my pack, and hiked in. The trail down to the hollow was narrow and steep. Erosion had chewed up big sections, leaving it half trail, half dry creek bed. My boots slipped a few times on loose rocks, but it was manageable. By the time I made it to the bottom, the ridges had closed in tight around me. It felt like being in a shallow bowl of earth, rimmed with trees that looked ready to tumble down. No cell service, of course. I expected that. I found a flat spot near the base of the North Ridge, just far enough from the trickle of water still running through the bottom of the hollow. It was a decent spot, open enough for the tent, but with plenty of cover. The ridges blocked most of the wind, and the air smelled of cold dirt and wet leaves. Not a bad setup. Setting up camp took no time. Tent, ground pad, sleeping bag, small fire ring made of rocks. Enough wood lying around for a good fire. I had packed simple food, jerky, trail mix, some instant soup, and a small camping stove. As the sun dropped, the hollow filled with shadows fast. The ridges blocked most of the sunset. What little light was left got swallowed by the trees. I sat by the fire, listening. Ridge Hollow was quiet, but not silent. Small cracks of twigs, rustling leaves, things moving. Probably raccoons or deer. Still, there was a feeling to it. Something different. The way sound bounced around the hollow was strange. Echoes didn't work right. A branch snapping far off sounded like it was right behind me. My own footsteps seemed to vanish into the ground. After a while, it stopped feeling like I was hearing things and started feeling like things were hearing me. It was probably nothing. I slept light that night. Every little sound seemed bigger, closer. Around midnight, I heard footsteps on the ridge. Not animal footsteps. Slow, deliberate crunches of boots on dead leaves. Someone was up there, moving along the rim of the hollow, but not heading down into it, just pacing. Could have been another camper, but Ridge Hollow wasn't that kind of place. I stayed in my tent, still as possible, listening. The steps would stop for long stretches, then start again. Always staying above me, always moving along the ridge. They circled the hollow once, twice. Hours passed. My fire had died down to nothing but soft orange coals. The dark pressed in thick and heavy. Eventually, the steps stopped for good. I didn't sleep much after that. By morning, the hollow was covered in fog. Thick, low-hanging mist that hugged the ground, making everything feel small and close. I packed up my stove, forced down some cold instant oatmeal, and tried to shake off the nerves. I told myself it was nothing, probably a hunter scouting or some idiot messing around. But then I found the footprints. Not mine. Someone else had come down into the hollow at some point early that morning. The prints were fresh, sharp edges, heading straight toward my camp, then stopping about 20 feet from my tent. They didn't come closer. They just stopped. No turning around, no circling away. The ground was soft enough that more steps would have left marks. It was like whoever it was had just vanished. I checked around more, but the fog made it hard to see beyond a few yards. Every tree looked like someone standing still. Every dark shape could have been a person. But I didn't see anyone. I thought about packing up and leaving, but pride got the better of me. I come out here to get away, and I wasn't going to get scared off by some footprints. So I stayed. The day was uneventful. Fog lifted by mid-morning. Sun never fully came out, but it was bright enough. I walked the hollow, staying close to camp. The woods felt normal again. Birds chirped. Squirrels did squirrel things. By afternoon, I'd convinced myself that the footsteps were probably mine from earlier and I just missed them somehow. That night, the pacing started again. Same slow, deliberate steps along the ridge. Same pattern. One long loop around the hollow, then silence. But this time, there was a new sound. Tapping. Sharp, rhythmic, like metal on rock. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap, tap. It wasn't close at first, but it moved. The tapping started high up on the ridge, then slowly made its way down. Not straight toward me, but angling across the ridge face. Every few steps, tap, 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 like someone carrying something metal, using it to knock on the rocks as they walked. I stayed in my tent. No flashlight, just listening. The tapping stopped somewhere below the ridgeline, maybe halfway up the slope. Then nothing. No footsteps, no sounds at all. Minutes passed, then a new sound. Breathing, soft at first, then louder. Labored, wet breaths, like someone had been running a long time and couldn't catch their air. But it wasn't moving, just standing out there in the dark, breathing. The fire had gone out. The cold crept in through the thin tent walls. I didn't dare move. Every breath I took sounded deafening. The breathing outside kept going for what felt like forever. Then slowly it faded. No footsteps leaving, just gone. I didn't sleep. To first light, I packed up, fast. As I rolled up my tent, I noticed something on one of the nearby trees. Scratches. Deep, straight grooves low to the ground. Too straight to be from an animal, and spaced too close together for a normal hand. It looked like someone had dragged a rake across the bark. But there were no rake marks in the ground, just on that one tree, about 15 feet from where I'd slept. I left Ridge Hollow without eating, without even finishing packing properly. The hike out was harder than it should have been. The trail felt steeper, the ground looser. Every sound made me whip my head around. Every shadow looked like someone standing still. When I reached my truck, I noticed something else. Mud. Fresh mud smeared across the driver's side door handle. Finger streaks, 5 of them, dragging downward like someone had tried to open it with a muddy hand. I hadn't noticed it when I got there. I would've. It was too obvious. Whoever had been in Ridge Hollow had come out to my truck. Maybe while I was setting up camp. Maybe while I was sleeping. I got in and left fast. Didn't look back. That night, safe at home, I checked the truck again. Mud was still there, drying now. The streaks were clearer. 5 fingers, but not normal. The middle 3 were too close together. The outer 2 were set too wide, like the hand wasn't built right. That detail stuck with me. I never went back to Ridge Hollow. Over the next few weeks, I kept thinking about it. The steps pacing the ridge, the tapping, the breathing, the footprints that just stopped, the scratches low on the tree, the mud on my truck. It wasn't a ghost. I don't believe in that crap. But something was living out there, not passing through, living there, watching the hollow, pacing, breathing, coming close, but never quite revealing themselves. Not yet. They could have come down to my tent if they wanted. Could have tried the zipper, but they didn't. That scared me more than anything, because it meant they were waiting for what I didn't want to know. I haven't camped alone since. I've always been a woods person, not in some wilderness survival show-off way, just someone who feels better away from crowds, noise, and asphalt. I like the quiet. I like the work of setting up a good camp, finding deadfall for firewood, listening to the little sounds of the forest when it's not competing with engines or phones. That's why I found myself at Cutter's Hollow that fall. It wasn't on any popular maps. It was one of those places you only know about if you've been around the locals long enough to hear stories. Not spooky stories, just folks talking about places they used to hunt or fish back when they were younger. Cutter's Hollow came up in a conversation at the bait shop. Quiet, out of the way, no maintained trails. That's all I needed to hear. So I went. It was October, late in the season. The air had that sharp bite to it, but no snow yet. The trees were mostly bare, leaves crunching underfoot. The ground soft from recent rains. The sky was that solid gray, the kind that feels like it could stay that way for weeks. The trailhead wasn't marked, just a pull-off on an old service road with a break in the trees. From there, it was a hike 2, maybe 3 hours down into the hollow. The ground dropped fast, ridges rising on either side. The deeper I went, the less sound I heard. First, no traffic noise, then no birds, just the wet squish of my boots, my breathing, and the soft groan of trees swaying overhead. It wasn't eerie at first, just quiet. The hollow itself was wider than I expected. An old creek bed, mostly dry now, snaked through the middle. Big boulders sat where water used to carve through, now mossy and still. The trees down there were bigger, older, and the way they leaned made it feel like the woods were closing in above. I picked a spot near a rock outcrop. Good visibility, some flat ground for my tent, and enough cover to keep the wind down. I set up camp like I'd done 100 times before. Tent, sleeping pad, sleeping bag, fire ring from gathered stones. Found plenty of dead branches for the fire. That first evening was peaceful. I ate simple jerky and a can of beans heated on the fire. The light faded fast, swallowed by the ridges. The woods got dark early down there. The only light was the soft glow of my fire reflecting off the damp rocks. Then came the noise. It wasn't loud. A soft clicking like 2 stones tapping together. Slow, deliberate. At first, I thought it was just something dripping from the trees, maybe a stick hitting a rock. But it kept going. Click, click. Pause. Click, click, click. Always in pairs or threes. It was coming from up the ridge. Not far, maybe 50, 60 yards out. I stayed by the fire, listened. The sound didn't get closer, but it didn't stop either. After maybe an hour, it faded. Just stopped. I chalked it up to a bird, maybe an animal. I'd heard weirder things in the woods. That night was colder. I crawled into my bag, zipped up tight. The sounds of the woods seemed muted, like the trees themselves were holding their breath. Sleep came in fits. Every time the wind shifted, it felt like something was moving out there. But nothing happened. The next morning was damp. A light mist clung to the hollow. I set about making coffee on my little stove, shaking off the bad sleep. That's when I noticed the stones. 3 of them, laid out in a line at the edge of my camp. Small, maybe the size of my fist. 2 perfectly placed to be an accident. Clean, no moss or dirt on them. Someone had put them there, quietly, in the dark. I looked around. The woods were empty. Still, I told myself it was probably some old marker. Maybe hunters used it before, but they hadn't been there the night before. Breakfast felt tasteless. My appetite was gone. I spent the day hiking up and down the hollow, looking for tracks, signs of anyone else. The ground was soft from rain, perfect for leaving prints. I found none. Not human, not even deer, just soggy leaves and old boot prints of my own. But I kept feeling watched. You know that feeling, the hairs on your neck stand up, and you can't shake the sense that eyes are on you. Every time I stopped, I thought I heard something stop too. Not close, always just out of sight. That evening, I made the fire bigger. The clicking started again. This time, it was lower down the ridge. Closer. Click, click. Click, click, click. The pattern never changed. It circled my camp. Not fast, like someone pacing, but never stepping into the firelight. I stayed awake late, listening. At some point, the clicking stopped again. I should have packed up the next morning. Should have trusted my gut. But stubbornness is a funny thing. I wasn't going to get scared out of the woods by some rocks and noises. That was my mistake. The 3rd day was colder. The wind had shifted, bringing a sharper bite. Clouds hung low, promising rain. I didn't plan to stay another night. Just pack up after breakfast and hike out. That was the plan. But then I found the second set of stones. 5 this time, placed in a circle around the fire pit. Same size, same clean surface. No moss, no dirt. They hadn't been there the night before. And that wasn't all. In the mud near the fire pit marks. Not prints, just long, dragged lines. Like someone had squatted there and used a stick to draw lazy circles in the mud. No clear pattern, just scraping, swirling lines. I didn't hear anything while they did this. That scared me more than the stones. I packed fast, tearing down camp in a rush, stuffing gear into my pack without caring how it fit. I kept looking up at the ridges, half expecting to see someone standing there. But the woods were empty. I started back up the trail. The hike out was harder. My legs felt heavy. Every step felt like it was being watched. Halfway up, I stopped for water. That's when I noticed the rocks again. 3 of them, placed right in the middle of the trail behind me. I hadn't passed them on the way down. There was no way I'd missed them, and there was no sound of anyone behind me. I didn't stop again, just pushed on, head down, moving as fast as I could without slipping. The trees seemed to close in tighter. Every little crack of a branch made my heart jump. When I finally reached the truck, the air felt different, lighter, like whatever was down in that hollow didn't follow me out. But it had left a message. Mud, smudged across the driver's side mirror. 3 long streaks like fingers dragged down, wide apart, too wide for a normal hand. I didn't clean it, just got in and left. Driving back, every bend in the road felt like it was hiding someone. I kept checking the mirrors, half expecting to see those streaks appear again. Fresh. Back home, I told myself to forget it. It was just a weird trip, probably kids messing around, maybe hunters trying to spook people off their land. But it never sat right. I checked maps, records, anything about Cutter's Hollow. Hardly anything. Old land surveys, mentions of logging operations from over 50 years ago. No recent activity, no campsites, nothing official. A few weeks later, I was back at the bait shop. Same old-timers hanging around. I asked one of them, casual-like, if they'd ever camped at Cutter's Hollow. He looked at me for a long time before answering. Used to hunt there. Long time ago. Stopped going. Place changed. That was all he said. I didn't push. I haven't been back. Not to Cutter's Hollow. Not to that side of the woods. I still camp, but I stick to marked trails now. Places with other people nearby. Because there's something out there in those deep woods. Not a ghost. Not a monster from a story. Just Something that doesn't want to be seen. Something that watches. That leaves little markers to remind you whose land you're on. Could have done more. Could have come into my camp. Could have done worse. But it didn't. It let me go. That's what stays with me. The feeling that it wasn't done. That it was just letting me leave that time. Because maybe that's part of its game. I still see those rocks sometimes. In dreams. 3 in a line. 5 in a circle. Sometimes in the woods. When I think I'm alone, I see them off trail. Too clean. Too perfect. That's when I leave. Because next time, it might not just let me walk away. I spend a lot of time in the woods. Always have. There's something about being alone out there. Away from people, away from all the noise that clears my head. I like the quiet, not silence, because the woods are never really silent, but quiet in a way that feels honest. Birds, wind, branches creaking. That kind of quiet. A few years back, I had a spot I used to go to pretty often. It was deep. You wouldn't stumble into it by accident. About 10 miles of logging road to get close, then another 3 or 4 on foot. No cell service. No one around, just old woods. Spruce, pine, big old hardwoods. Underbrush thick enough in places you had to push your way through it like a swimmer breaking the surface. That fall, I'd been going out there more than usual. I had some stuff going on. Nothing dramatic, just life. And I needed the space. I'd set up a little camp off a ridge where there was a narrow stream. Barebones setup. Tarp, sleeping bag, small fire ring I kept covered when I left. I wasn't out there to play survivalist, just wanted a place to breathe. It was on one of those trips when I saw it, or I guess him, or her. To this day, I don't really know what I saw, but I know it wasn't right. The day started like any other. Loaded up my pack, hiked in, got the fire going. Spent a few hours just walking, following old game trails, listening to the forest talk. Around late afternoon, maybe 3 or 4, the light started to shift. That soft yellow that hits just before dusk really gets a hold. I remember because it made the leaves glow, like the woods were lit from within. I was on my way back to camp, about a half-mile out, when I noticed the smell. Sharp, bitter, like old meat left too long in the sun. But it was cold that day, maybe 40 degrees. No reason for a smell like that to be hanging in the air. I figured maybe a deer had died nearby. Happens all the time, so I kept walking. Then I heard it. Heavy steps. Not a squirrel, not a deer. Something big. Moving slow. Deliberate. I stopped, crouched down, listened. The steps were coming from a dense patch of spruce to my left. Whatever it was close. Now, I've run into bears before. Black bears, usually. They'll bluff charge, huff at you, sometimes stand up to get a better look. This felt different. No snorting, no crashing through brush. Just slow, steady steps. Like it wasn't in a hurry. Like it knew exactly where it was going. The smell got stronger. I could taste it, metallic and sour. I should have turned around. Should have backed out, made some noise, let whatever it was know I was there. But I didn't. I just stayed crouched, heart pounding, eyes locked on that wall of spruce. That's when it came out. First, just a shape. Big. Tall, moving between the trunks. My brain tried to fit it into something familiar. Bear. Had to be a bear. But there was something off. The way it moved. Too upright. Bears can stand, sure, but not like this. Not for that long. And not with arms hanging that way. It shuffled forward on 2 legs, slow, almost careful, like every step was planned. The skin was wrong. Bare in patches, rough and raw. The color of old leather left out in the sun. Sparse tufts of fur clung to its shoulders and back, but most of it was just exposed skin, cracked and weeping. Mange. Severe mange. I'd seen pictures of bears in bad shape, but this was worse. Its head was down, chin tucked to its chest. From the angle, I couldn't see its face. Just the slope of its skull, the ragged outline of ears barely visible. Its arms hung low, longer than they should have been, fingers, or maybe claws, curled loosely. It stopped about 20 yards from me, raised its head, and that's when the panic hit. Its face was not right. Not bare, not fully. The bone structure was close, but the lack of fur, the sunken eyes, the stretched lips made it look human in a way that flipped my stomach. The nose was shrunken, almost flat. Its mouth hung slightly open, showing teeth stained brown and yellow. It looked like a man wearing a bear's skull that didn't fit quite right. It sniffed the air, slow, methodical, the way a predator does when it's trying to place you. I didn't move, didn't breathe. My fingers had sunk into the dirt, nails breaking against the cold ground. Turned its head, looking past me, listening. Then it did something I'll never forget. It stood straighter, not fully upright, but close enough. And it walked, on two legs, for 5 steps, like a man who'd forgotten how to be a man. Awkward, swaying, but steady. My brain was screaming, bear. It's just a bear. Sick bear. Mange can do that. But my gut wasn't buying it. Something was wrong with this thing beyond the sickness. The way it moved, the way it looked around like it knew more than it should. Passed within 15 yards of me. Close enough I could hear the wet rasp of its breathing. Close enough I could see the flies crawling over its back. It didn't look at me, didn't even glance. I stayed crouched until it vanished into the trees. Only then did I let myself breathe again. My legs were numb. My hands shook. I packed up camp in record time. Didn't bother with the fire. Just grabbed my gear and got moving. The whole hike back to the logging road. Every snapped twig made my heart jump. I kept thinking about how many stories you hear about upright creatures in the woods. Bigfoot, skinwalkers, wild men. I used to laugh at that stuff. But what if some of them were just bears? Sick, diseased, falling apart. And what if seeing something that close to human, even if it's just an illusion of sickness, is enough to break people's minds? I made it back to my truck by dark, locked the doors out of habit, sat there for a while, staring into the woods, trying to process what I'd seen. I didn't go back to that spot, but it stuck with me. I started looking up images. Mange in bears, coyotes, foxes. The way it strips them down, reshapes them into something wrong, something almost human. And the more I looked, the more I wondered how many creature sightings were really just that, sick animals. A few months later, I read a report from a couple counties over. Hikers had seen a large man-like figure in the woods, walked on 2 legs, hairless patches, described it as a wild man or ape. They even said it followed them for a while. The description matched what I saw almost perfectly. No one confirmed anything. Officials said it was probably a bear. And you know what? I believe them now. I think most of these stories start with a bear. But seeing one up close, stripped of what makes it clearly an animal, can shake a person. When the forest shows you something familiar, but twisted just enough to unsettle you, your mind fills in the blanks. You want to believe it's something more, but it doesn't need to be. Nature doesn't care what you think you saw. A sick bear is terrifying enough without any legends tacked on. That image is burned into me. Not a monster, not a myth, just a bear, dying, falling apart, standing wrong, looking wrong, but real. And that's the worst part, because it means there's no mystery. It means the woods don't need monsters to scare you. What's already out there is enough. I've done a lot of solo hikes over the years. People think you're asking for trouble being alone in the woods, but most of the time, it's not the woods you have to worry about. It's yourself. You make a dumb mistake, get hurt, run out of water, lose the trail. That's usually how it goes bad. But there was one trip that still makes me uneasy. This happened in the fall of 2021, up in the mountains of Pennsylvania. I won't say the exact spot, but it's the kind of place where you can walk for days and not see another soul, especially that late in the year. I went in with a backpack, a hammock, basic gear, and a plan to stay 3 nights. The weather was chilly but clear. I had topo maps, GPS, even a satellite messenger. I'm not careless. I don't take risks, or at least I thought I didn't. The first day was perfect. That kind of quiet you only get far from people. Leaves underfoot, air cold enough to see your breath. No bugs, no noise except squirrels and the occasional woodpecker hammering at a tree. I made camp about 10 miles in, slung the hammock between two oaks, cooked dinner on my little stove, and crawled into my sleeping bag early. Sometime in the night, I woke up to movement. Not loud, soft, deliberate steps, the kind that make the hairs on your arms stand up. My first thought was deer, or maybe a black bear nosing around. I stayed still, heart thudding, listening. The footsteps stopped close by. I couldn't see a thing, the moon was barely out, and the woods were thick. But I heard breathing, heavy, slow. Not huffing, not panicked, just steady. Now, I've been around bears before. They make noise. They grunt, huff, paw at things. This didn't. It just stood there, breathing, maybe 10, 15 feet away. Eventually, after what felt like an hour but was probably minutes, the breathing faded. I didn't hear it walk away, but it was gone. I lay awake till dawn, clutching my knife, every muscle tense. In the morning, I checked around camp. Nothing. No torn gear, no prints in the leaves. The ground was too dry to show much. Could have been a bear. Could have been nothing. But the quiet way it moved didn't sit right. Still, I told myself it was fine. I come out here to be away from people, right? This is what that feels like. The second day, I hiked further in. The woods got thicker, darker. The trees older. Felt different. Not bad, just heavy. Like the woods had grown over itself too many times. The kind of place where the sun barely reaches the ground, even at noon. Around midday, I found what looked like an old logging road, overgrown but still there. I decided to follow it for a while just for the novelty. It wound around ridges and gullies, mostly level, easy walking. That's when I noticed something off. About 50 yards up the slope, I saw a shape. At first, I thought it was a stump. Tall, narrow, leaning slightly, but it wasn't right. The color was wrong, grayish, patchy, like skin, or what was left of it. I froze. It didn't move. I figured maybe it was a dead tree with weird bark, or maybe even an old hunting blind falling apart. But it nagged at me. The shape was too symmetrical. Broad shoulders, long arms hanging by its sides. Stood like a man, or something trying to. After a minute, I kept walking. I didn't stare, didn't stop, just kept a steady pace like I hadn't seen it. I didn't want to know. I didn't want to find out. Another mile down the road, the smell hit me. Rot. Not the sweet, sharp stink of a dead deer. This was worse. Thick, sour, like wet fur and old meat. I've cleaned enough game to know the difference. This wasn't just something dead. This was disease. I scanned the woods but didn't see anything. The smell came and went with the wind. I picked up my pace. That night, I made camp well off the old road. I didn't want to be where anyone, or anything, could just walk up on me. I picked a hollow below a rocky outcrop, hoping it would give me some cover. I kept my headlamp off, used my red light sparingly. Ate cold food. No fire. I wanted to disappear. The woods were loud that night. Twigs cracking, leaves rustling. Small animals moving fast like they were nervous too. I didn't sleep much. Sometime after midnight, I heard it again. The breathing, closer this time, right above me on the rocks. Slow, steady, wet sounding, like lungs struggling through something thick. I lay still, barely breathing. I thought about turning on my light, but didn't. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to know if it was standing there, watching. The breathing stayed for a long time. Then a sound I'll never forget. A dragging, scraping noise, like claws or bare feet sliding down stone. It was moving slowly, deliberately around the edge of the outcrop. I clenched my knife so hard my hand cramped. I thought about the bear theory again. Mange can make them look awful. Hairless, scabby, skeletal. On their hind legs, they'd look all wrong. But this wasn't a bear's pace. It was too careful, too precise. Eventually, the noises faded. Not back up the rocks, but sideways into the trees. I didn't sleep at all after that. The first light, I broke camp fast. I didn't eat. I didn't care about the trail. I just headed toward where I thought the road would be, then back the way I'd come. I knew I had at least a full day's hike to get out. The woods felt different now. Too quiet. No birds. No squirrels. Just my own breathing and the crunch of my boots. A few hours in, I saw it again. It was standing at the edge of the trees, maybe 30 yards away, upright. Mangy, hairless patches over what looked like skin stretched too tight. Long arms, longer than they should be. Fingers? Claws? Couldn't tell. His head was wrong. Small, lopsided, with ears pressed flat. A bear's snout, but shorter. Or maybe the mange had taken so much fur it looked like that. Stood there, swaying slightly, watching me. I didn't stop, didn't run, just kept walking steady like before. My heart was hammering so hard I felt sick, but I kept moving. It didn't follow, or if it did, I never heard it. By dusk, I reached the area where I'd camped the first night. That felt like a safe zone now, ridiculous as it sounds. I set up fast. No fire, no stove. Kept my head down, ears open. That night, it didn't come close. Or if it did, it didn't make a sound. But I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. To first light, I hiked out. The last few miles, when the woods started thinning, when the trail got more defined, I felt something lift. Like whatever had been back there didn't want to leave its place. Like it had a territory and I'd crossed out of it. When I finally reached my truck, I felt the tension drain out of me. My hands were shaking as I unlocked the door. I didn't even bother changing out of my boots. I just got in and drove. I didn't tell anyone about it for a while. What would I say? That I saw something standing like a man, but moving like an animal? That it watched me for miles but never attacked? Nobody would believe me. But later, I read something that made my stomach turn. Bears with mange can look almost unrecognizable. The disease strips their fur, infects their skin, eats at their bodies until they're gaunt, patchy, skeletal. When they stand up, they can look human-shaped. If you didn't know what you were seeing, if it was dusk or dark or the woods were thick enough, you might think it was something else. But here's the thing. Bears with mange don't act normal. The sickness makes them desperate, bold. They'll approach people. They'll linger. Some even lose their fear. Some might follow you, not out of curiosity, but out of sheer need. Hunger, sickness, that's what I think happened. I think I walked into the territory of a bear so far gone with mange it barely knew what it was anymore. It followed me because I was something alive, something it couldn't place. It didn't attack because maybe it couldn't. Maybe it was too weak. Or maybe it was still just barely a bear, and something in it remembered to be wary. But I think if I'd stayed one more night, it might have gotten brave enough. Or desperate enough. That's why I never go alone into places like that anymore. You can prepare for a lot. Weather, injuries, getting lost. But you can't prepare for something that's not afraid of you anymore. Because nothing is more dangerous than something sick, starving, and too far gone to remember what fear feels like. I used to think the stories people told about skinwalkers and other strange creatures in the woods were just superstitions. Something people made up to scare themselves. Campfire stories. A lot of them sounded the same. Some tall, skinny thing walking on two legs, moving like it shouldn't, with eyes that didn't look human or animal. But they always stayed vague. A shadow, a shape. Rarely did anyone describe anything that sounded like a real animal. That should have been the first clue. I wasn't out looking for legends. I was just out hunting. It was early November, upstate Pennsylvania. The kind of woods that stretch for miles, where you can walk all day and not cross a single road. A buddy of mine had pointed me to a patch of state forest land not too far from the New York border. Said he'd seen plenty of deer sign up there, but hadn't had the time to go after them. So I figured why not? I wanted a place quiet, where no one would bother me, and where I wouldn't have to worry about another hunter's stray shot. The air was cold that morning, not quite freezing, but close enough that your breath fogged in front of you. The ground was covered in leaves, but they were damp from the rain a couple of days back. That helped. Wet leaves don't crunch as loud. I'd parked off a dirt access road, shouldered my rifle, and started walking in. No trail, just bushwhacking my way through. After about an hour, the sounds of the road faded. No cars, no people, just the woods. I've always liked that, the quiet. But even with that peace, you still notice things. Like how sometimes, when it gets real quiet, it's not peaceful anymore. Still, like something's watching. I shook it off. Just me being alone, deeper in than I usually go. It was about mid-morning when I saw the first tracks. Not deer. These were bigger. Not bear either, not quite. Longer, thinner. But the ground was soft, the prints were messy. Could have been anything, really. The woods play tricks like that. You catch a glimpse of something, and your brain fills in the rest. I followed them anyway. Curiosity, maybe, or boredom. The tracks led further into a stretch where the trees grew tighter. Hemlocks, mostly. The sun barely made it through their needles. The air felt colder there, damper. That's when I started seeing the fur. Clumps of it snagged on low branches. Grayish, but not like a healthy animal's fur. Patchy, thin, almost like hair from an old rug. I'd seen bears with mange before, from photos mostly. This looked like that, only worse. I could imagine how people would see something like this in the wrong light and think it was some monster. Skinwalker, Wendigo, whatever name people give to things that aren't right. But this was still just an animal. Sick, struggling. I kept going. Dumb, maybe, but I wanted to see it. Some part of me wanted to prove to myself that there wasn't anything strange out here. Just an animal. The smell hit before I saw it. Rot. Not full-on decay, but that sweet, sour stink of infection. Flesh going bad. Wet and sharp. I slowed my steps, trying not to make noise. I didn't want to spook whatever it was. But more than that, I didn't want it coming at me. Then I saw movement up ahead. Something low to the ground, moving slow. I raised my rifle, not to shoot, but to get the scope on it, get a better look. What I saw made my stomach twist. It was a bear. Had to be. The size was right, but it was wrong too. Its fur was nearly gone. Just strings of it hanging off its sides. Its skin was gray, crusted with scabs and sores. Parts of it were raw, pink, and weeping. The way it moved was strange too. Its front left leg didn't seem to work right. Bent at an angle, so it kind of lurched forward, rocking side to side. Its body twisted. Its face, Jesus. Most of the fur was gone there too. The skin looked tight, stretched over its skull. Its mouth hung open, tongue swollen and black at the edges. Its eyes were sunken, but they caught the light just enough to gleam. That's how those stories start. Some hunter sees something like this, through the trees in low light. Sick, mangy, moving like it's broken. Their mind goes to the wildest place first. Monster, skinwalker, demon in the woods. But up close it was just sad. Still dangerous, though. More so, maybe. Sick animals don't think right. They get desperate. I thought about backing off, leaving it be, but then it turned its head. It had seen me. There was a moment, a frozen second, where neither of us moved, just staring at each other. And then it started toward me, not charging, not running, but coming all the same. That weird, lurching limp. His breath came out in wet huffs. I could hear it now, even over the soft ground. The wheeze and gurgle. I raised the rifle properly this time. Safety off. I didn't want to shoot it. I didn't come out for that. But when it got closer, too close, I fired. The shot cracked through the woods. The bear stumbled but didn't go down. I'd hit it, I was sure of it. The way it jerked, the spray of something dark against the leaves. But it kept coming. I shot again. This time it dropped. The woods were quiet again. Just my breathing, rough and fast. My hands trembled a little as I worked the bolt, chambering another round. I waited, watched, but it didn't move. When I got closer, I could see the damage properly. The thing was a mess of bone and rot. Its ribs showed through its skin. There were old wounds on it, some looking self-inflicted, like it had been tearing at its own flesh. Mange will do that to a bear. Drives them crazy, weakens their immune system, leaves them open to infections, parasites. I'd read all that, but seeing it here up close was something else. It had suffered. I stood there a long time, rifle lowered, staring at what was left of it. People always want to believe there's something out there that doesn't belong, that the woods are full of secrets. But most of the time, the truth's sadder, more brutal. I thought about how easy it would have been to mistake this thing for a monster. From a distance, at night, especially if you wanted to see a monster. I was about to turn back when I noticed more tracks. Smaller, not cubs, not deer, coyote maybe, or stray dogs. They circled the area. Close, too close. That's when I realized. This bear had been dying for a while. Weak, slow. Something had been following it. Waiting. I didn't see them at first, but they were there. In the treeline, a shape shifted. Low, quiet. Coyotes. Half a dozen of them. Maybe more. They were thin too, ribs showing, scraggly fur. They'd been on this bear's trail, waiting for it to drop. And now they were looking at me. Coyotes usually don't mess with people. Not unless they're desperate. These were. I backed up slowly, rifle still up. One coyote stepped forward. Bold. Its lips pulled back in a silent snarl, but it didn't make a sound. Just stared. I wasn't going to wait for them to get braver. A warning shot cracked through the air. They scattered, tails low, but they didn't go far. Just circled wider, watching, following. I kept my pace steady, backing out the way I'd come. Every so often, I'd see a flash of gray between the trees. They were patient, hoping I'd slip up, hoping I'd give them a chance. That walk back felt longer than the hike in. My nerves stretched tight, every sound magnified. A branch snap, a rustle. Each one made me turn, heart thudding. But they never rushed me, they just followed. When I finally saw the break in the trees where my truck was parked, it was like seeing a lighthouse after a storm. I moved faster then, risked a glance back. The coyotes stood at the edge of the woods, just watching. I didn't lower my rifle until I was inside the truck with the doors locked. Driving out, I kept checking the mirrors, like they'd come running after me. But they didn't. They had their prize now, that sick, dying bear. No need to risk tangling with something that could fight back. The road felt different on the way out. Less remote, less wild. That night, back home, I couldn't stop thinking about it. How close it had been. How easily that story could have twisted into something else. If I'd only caught a glimpse of that bear in the shadows, moving like it did, I might have believed the same nonsense. Another skinwalker tale, another monster in the woods. But it wasn't. It was just a bear. Sick, dying, real. People don't like to face that. They'd rather believe in demons. But the woods don't need monsters. They've got sickness, hunger, desperation. That's enough.